Yeah,
Give it up for Mr. Dale.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful event you guys got going here. Like, fantastic job from all the volunteers. Bsides, love it. Going to be there next year as well. Look at this slide, by the way. Disrupting nation states, cyber criminals, and there's animation. Turns out PowerPoint has a button called, well, it should have been called Pimp My Slide, but you can just click this sign button and magic happens. But yeah, my talk will basically be revolving two concepts: continuous attack surface management and what we have defined as always-on pen testing. Trying to change up the game a little bit, innovate a little bit, and see if we can basically make our customers have better security. Chris Dale, I teach for SANS. In fact, the slide, I'm also a founder of River Security, where we're a group of 9 people now, trying to make the world a bit harder to hack. I teach for SANS, so I travel all over the world. I travel US, Europe, Africa, Middle East, trying to preach, trying to tell people how things can be done, how it should be done, and hopefully also make it actionable, something that you can actually implement the next week. In short, I do a lot of penetration testing, and unfortunately, you might also have seen me commenting about incident response as well. Ransomware cases been a big one the past few years. It's been huge. Companies literally on the verge of dying, and having to help them is anything but fun. So yeah, alphabet soup of certifications, a little bit about myself, all right? Now, a question for all of you. Why do we do pen testing? I mean, sometimes we gotta go back to the basics and ask the simple questions. Why do we do pen testing? To help a customer not get hacked tomorrow, so they are safe, to figure out which CVEs and bugs you need to patch so that we won't get popped anytime in the future, to maybe stimulate long-term effectiveness of your security policies and make security better in the long term. Pen testing is, for many, a silver bullet that basically makes you a little bit more immune to hackers online. And I don't necessarily agree with that. There's a couple of problems with a traditional pen test. I've been lucky enough to work on both sides of the table. I spent 3 years working as a CISO for a company called ShareCat Solutions, so I had to procure pen tests from some of the people here in the audience even. And I've been working for many years on the other side of the table. I've been providing pen tests and making customers understand why they need to buy a pen test. I've seen some problems on both sides of the table that are not necessarily being addressed by everyone at the moment. For example, as a client, somebody who wants to buy a pen test, what's the scope of the pen test? I mean, here I am wanting to have a pen test because I want to make sure that, well, hackers are not going to break in tomorrow. And I'm going to have to figure out what the scope is. I got to figure out which assets that I want to put in scope, which assets that should be excluded from scope. And I don't necessarily know how hackers operate. I don't necessarily know how they do attack surface discovery, scanning, and so on. I'm not qualified to set my own scope of a pen test. Why? Because I have shadow IT. I have dark data. I don't know what the scope could be when a real hacker, a real threat actor targets this company, my company, for example. They're going to find the things that I didn't know about. And when we do incident response, guess what? Very rarely is a customer hacked by something super sophisticated or advanced. Very often, the customer is hacked by something that makes the entire company go, oh no, that server, that user, oh no, they did that. It's very often something stupid, right? And we are not buying pen tests for those systems because most likely they're not on our radar. Okay? So that's a bit of a problem. Also, it's a typically once-a-year approach. We don't do it often enough. I mean, agile has been for years something developers do, but pen testers, not very much agile just yet. We're trying to get there, though. Providing a pen test, what is the scope? Right? How do you find the scope of a pen test? Well, I got to do my reconnaissance, my scanning, my discovery of assets. I got to figure out what this company looks like. But that's after the customer has signed a deal. So you won't actually find out what the scope is until you start. And maybe you do some scoping meetings and so on, and you waste everybody's time. You still haven't signed any money on a paper yet. So it's not very nice process, in my honest opinion, to figure out the scope before even, well, having any money on the table. The scope also, when set, often infuriates pen testers, because once you start working on an engagement, you start to hack into the multitude of systems, you discover other systems, neighboring systems that are so much more juicy. You know, oh, I'm supposed to hack over here, but I just found these other ones I really want to touch, but I can't. And that can be frustrating. It can be sad. And you really want to tell the customer, but then you're in a dilemma of a scope creep. Nobody wants a scope creep because, well, more billable hours, it's going to cost a bit more, expectations are not necessarily met. And I want to ask you, the threat actors out there, oh, this one is animated too, I didn't know that. Beautiful. Again, hit the magic button, pimp my slide. Do attackers care about the scope? A real threat actor who wants to get in doesn't care about scope whatsoever. They're not going to look at you and say, I better leave those assets alone. I mean, no. The attackers don't care about scope. And I found this beautiful video I hope some of you have seen before. It's like a meme. I want to quickly show you what it's all about. Somebody seen this one before? It is awesome. It's only 25 seconds. I thought it was a minute, but we'll see if this is the right one. But this guy is a CISO, and he's basically saying, hey, shoot me. Hey, come at me, bro. And he's like, really? Come on. I can take it. I got a bulletproof vest on.
Hey.
Nah. They just bought their new next generation firewall. Hit me. And the pen tester goes, okay, well. Right? That's really what I see during incident response. Once we do the root cause analysis, we figure out how they got broken into, then it's often a problem that was previously considered to be something they knew about, but they forgot about. That old DNS server, that system that should have been removed, that was never removed, that account that popped up after a migration to Azure, it popped up an account that was all of a sudden available on the internet that shouldn't be available on the internet. Attackers, they don't care about scope. They just care about monetization or breaking in somehow. So one of the things that I did was to look at what we're doing, try to innovate a little bit. I would call it micro-innovation, because we're not doing a whole lot. But instead of saying, hey, let's do a pen test, we can tell our customers, say, hey, let's map out your digital attack surface. Let's not say a pen test is one report, one result. Let's say a pen test is actually two different deliveries. It all starts with a digital attack surface overview. Let the hackers show you what we can find. Let us complement your asset inventory with all the stuff that we find. Your social media accounts, your leaked credentials that was leaked from Tufte Idrettslag or Studenttorget and so on. Let us give you all of the ammunition, make you as smart and clever as possible before we start negotiating and talking about a scope. I can do a lot of great things by just looking at IT assets. I mean, ask a pen tester. Tell them, have they ever had a hunch on how easy the system will be to hack? I mean, there's no CSS template on the page. It looks old. It looks a bit wobbly. It has a .php extension. You go like, I really want to hack over here. Every hacker, every pen tester will have some hunches, and we can attribute those hunches down to specific metrics that says, these systems are very attractive to an external penetration tester. We really want to recommend these assets to be in scope. And because we have already looked at those assets now, we can even basically estimate the size and the time it will take us to pen test those assets. So we can come up with maybe a fixed price, say, here's what it's going to cost. And the customer can then maybe add their own systems to it, they can remove their own systems, and we can basically, in a much better way, agree on a scope. This makes sense, right? I think it makes sense, and I know many of you feels that it makes sense now, because I'm seeing more and more cybersecurity companies that are offering their clients to, hey, first, let's map out the digital attack surface and figure it out. It is a good exercise that gives high value early on in the engagement, ensures trust between the parties, and overall, it's very fun to do. And that takes us into attack surface management. What is attack surface management then? Attack surface management is basically the digital footprint exercise evolved into a continuous cycle of reconnaissance, discovery, and scanning. We want to take a look at how things evolve, not just once a year, like a snapshot in time, this is you. We want to look at those systems and those assets, how they change throughout every day, how the landscape evolves. Every company will innovate, they will build, they will have organic growth, and we want to put that into a system that allows us to, well, detect those deltas, detect those changes that might give an attacker new opportunities. And that's what it's all about, in my opinion. Because an attacker, a real threat actor on the internet, will base themselves upon what opportunities exists today on how to break into this company. Log4j all of a sudden happened the day after you had a pen test. And you go like, oh, do I need another pen test now? Can we look for Log4j? And absolutely, you should be able to look for it. You should be able to discover such opportunities and basically identify them as potential threats. That should be something that you can do easily. Also, shadow IT and dark data should be something that is harder to implement. We can complement attack surface management with features of the blue team. Blue team has DNS logs, for example, that you can go look through things like Amazon, AWS buckets, Google Cloud Compute buckets, for example, Azure Blob Storage, and you can find shadow IT through cooperation as well. But there is basically the concept of attack surface management is basically, hey, let's put this digital attack surface, that report, let's put that into a system that lets us continuously maintain and monitor the customer. Finding those doors that we left open. You know, this meme here is beautiful, by the way. I saw this highway. Apparently, there is no sign. This sign has been photoshopped on top of this meme. But there we go, some meme trivia for everybody. But typically, when we are successful as pen testers, and I hope many of the pen testers in the room can confirm this with me, but very often you can get a sense of if you're going to be successful in the pen test or not by simply having a fantastic reconnaissance phase, by simply being very good at reconnaissance, building very targeted, nice, beautiful word lists, and building up that dossier of information, preparing you to the inevitable launching of exploits. To us, that's the most important phase. What determines the success of a pen test, of us breaking into a company? Typically, hey, reconnaissance. That's where we get value for our money. And basically, to improve your reconnaissance processes, you want to look for what we call the path least traveled. You want to, this is also for the bug bounty hunters out there. If you're going to be successful in bug bounty, you probably want to find those new systems or those systems that nobody else has found yet. You want to find that hidden attack surface, and you find that by having the best reconnaissance. You find it by having targeted, good, neat word lists and processes that will let you be notified when there is a change to the attack surface, so you can jump on that opportunity to quickly take advantage of it. There is a dilemma. From a business side, they want to grow. They want to build. They want to release marketing. Maybe they have stuff that wants to go out. Information should be spread. But from a cybersecurity perspective, we want to slow things down, right? In fact, cybersecurity for many has been all about saying, no. You want to move to the cloud? Hell no. No, you want to put some data out on a server in a DMZ and expose potentially GDPR-sensitive data through basic means of access controls? We've been saying no, 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 no. However, cybersecurity, in my eyes, is all about yes. You want to do something? Yes. But here's how it's done. Attack surface management and the digital footprint, this allows, hopefully, the security teams to say a bit more yes. Let's support the organization. Let's not hinder innovation. Let's not stop the company from growing. Let's say yes, but, And for the things that we cannot govern, maybe attack surface management will help us conclude and reduce that risk. I love seeing customers that they look like a tank from the outside. All we see is a couple of websites and a lot of endpoints, like VPN concentrators and so on, and there's not that much weed, you know? It looks very clean and neat from the outside. That's an attack surface, a digital attack surface, which is hardened and nice. Every version number is the same and so on. You can tell that the guys in IT operations are governing this. Whereas in most organizations, it's a lot of weeds, a lot of like things growing left and right, and you go like, what is this? Version number from 10 years ago, end of life systems, you find all kinds of stuff. So what is always on pen testing then? Well, always on pen testing is when we take basically the digital attack surface management and you pen test and verify all of the changes. So when a port is opened, when a new domain has been provisioned, when you found something new of an opportunity, when log4j comes out, for example, that CVE, that vulnerability, you want to be as fast as possible to quickly find out, can you exploit the customer? Taking the pen test down to the opportunities as they happen, instead of once a year, once a quarter, however fast that you can build things. So instead of working, my team, instead of working in projects that are a week, 2, 3 long, we are looking at projects that are, hey, let's look at this item. 45 minutes later, you're done. Let's look at another item. And we have this huge sandbox with tons of assets that belong to our customers that we try to hack simultaneously. It is a lot of fun working like this because it's working in the same modus operandi as real threat actors. Always on pen testing is basically us trying to real time, as fast as we can, figure out if we can conclude a possible opportunity down to actual exploitation. Where we say, we take the vulnerability scanner, we purchase those vulnerability licenses for Nessus and Tenable and like Rapid7 and so on. We will have those licenses, we will scan your assets, and take all those critical high-risk and mediums and ask ourselves, can we hack the customer now? Based on a vulnerability, a new CVE, NIST has just announced that, hey, there's a new CVE for Apache software, for example, Apache web server. We're going to take that CVE, we know the customer is running Apache across a couple of thousand assets maybe, and we will ask ourselves, based on the CVE, is there any reason for the customer to shut down the server and upgrade immediately, or can we wait till the next patch window? And that is very nice. Because now we get what we call high-fidelity alerts. We get alerts that we can trust. We can trust in these alerts because they've been verified by human people. I'm not a big fan of crying wolf, wolf all the time, which is something this industry is specializing on. It's kind of like we're proud of having very many findings. Like the higher number of findings that we can get is very nice for many. However, you look at this from a business side, you go, should I patch any of these? Is there something for me to do? Do I need to act on these 127 vulnerabilities? Or am I safe? I mean, I know there's a vulnerability, but I haven't been hacked yet. It's because nobody has looked yet? What is the reason? And the reason why you're not necessarily getting hacked immediately because you're running an end-of-life system, or because you're running, or you have a critical vulnerability on a web server, is most of the time, vulnerabilities have dependencies. The attacker might require an account on the system, for example. Ooh, big vulnerability in WordPress, only if you are assigning authors or users the author role. Only then will the server get popped and the pen testers can break in. Meaning that you can relax unless, well, you're currently giving random people on the internet the authorship role, or if any of those accounts get compromised. So I like working like this. In a traditional pen test, it's kind of like we're slow. We're turtles, very slowly but surely moving ahead. Well, threat actors, nation-state attackers like the US NSA, for example, they have a fantastic talk on YouTube from the Usenix conference. Rob Royce goes ahead and says, look, we are present every day. The reason why we are successful in breaking into customers, or victims, you could say, in foreign countries, is because we end up knowing the target better than they know themselves. They're cheetahs, super fast, always moving, always looking. If you open up a port only for a couple of hours, there's going to be somebody there to check, hey, port open, what is this? I used to say, pen tests, it's like playing badminton, and real criminals, they're playing tennis, right? Until a guy arrested me on that and said, well, you know, actually, a badminton ball can move faster than a tennis ball. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. But are we playing the same sport? We got to ask ourselves that. A traditional pen test, is that actually, will that give us something really actionable for the long-term sustainability and security of a company? And I think bug bounty, for example, attack surface management and so on, has higher returns for customers. Because it is all about speed and agility. Inspired by the military, which we are quite a bit in River, we believe that if we are faster than the threat actors out there to observe changes to attack surface, if we are faster to orient ourselves and ask ourselves the question, does this allow us to compromise the customer? Is there GDPR-sensitive data? Is there a way for us to run code? Can we do a denial of service? Any risk to the customer? If we can ask that question, orient ourselves really fast, decide on an outcome, and make the customer act on that rapidly, multiple times every day, we believe that we can have a chance against what the threat actors are currently doing to us. We can beat them. At least we can compete against them in the same arena that they're playing. This is based off the military. And the military, in a dogfight like these two fighter jets here, typically what you would say is that the pilot who has the fastest repeating OODA loops over and over and over is the pilot who's going to win the dogfight. The pilot who can quickest identify threats, identify mountains, up, down, velocity, and so on, over and over, make the right decisions based on the information that you can see, will win the dogfight. It comes down to how proactive and reactive we want to be. And we have this slide here to show you how companies could potentially mature in terms of cybersecurity. Because if you look at the journey of a company today, most companies, they will invest in shiny, nice, next-generation firewalls, antivirus, endpoint detection response, and so on. If they have a problem, if you get compromised, you are the most reactive you can imagine you be. You are now blocking attack, or you're trying to respond to an incident response. That's a reactive type of approach. When companies mature in terms of proactiveness, most companies, after they have invested in cybersecurity, they will ask themselves, what's next? What should come after we have purchased, we have licenses of different software, and they look towards the pen test. They need validation. All right, what if we let some hackers on the inside of our network now? Will we get popped now? Are we good enough now? What if we invite somebody to come hack our company? Can they? That's the typical approach. And then, once you have gotten a report, you fix the findings, you ask yourselves, what's next? We're still growing. The company requires more operations regarding security. So we're looking to mature into a security operations center, manage detection and response. And that step, for many organizations, is very hard. They fail and they stand still for years to come because they don't get to the point where they have money or time enough to invest into building robust security operations. And then if we look at the security operations, it is typically you sitting inside of your castle with spears, waiting for somebody to jump the wall and trigger some tripwires or alerts. You're waiting for alerts most of the time to basically respond to. Of course, we have cyber threat intelligence, we have proactiveness, things that we can complement a SOC with, but a traditional SOC with a SIM and so on, we're getting in alerts that we need to react to. What we're saying is maybe a different maturity would be to take the pen testing and turn it into as a service model. Because why not? Attack surface management, always on pen testing. You're on the internet, you're already getting hacked by somebody. So why not have the good guys be your criminal best friends on the internet trying to break in every day? And for some people, they're like, I'm really scared of inviting a team of hackers to try to break into us every day. But come on, there's already somebody trying to hack you, right? There is. There is a lot of people out there trying right now to hack you. And some of us, we say, well, okay, that's fine, I guess. I just don't want anybody else trying to hack us. And that's a losing concept. We're going to have to change. And I think we should allow pen testers to continuously review the cybersecurity status, like a bug bounty. We have defined this as an offensive cybersecurity operations center. Because why is the SOC concept only for defenders? I mean, my team, we're getting alerts. New port, new domain, new CVE, new leak. Those alerts are processed by a team of engineers, security analysts, security researchers, and they will ask themselves, do I need to forward this to a pen tester and have somebody look at it right now? It is an offensive security operations center. And that's how I would imagine some of the nation states working, basically doing reconnaissance and intelligence gathering every single day and feeding the valuable information down to people who can send attacks and try to prove risk. And within this architecture here, we have a lot of different components. And that's what the next section is going to contain. I've been told that we have plenty of time, so we're going to go a bit slow through the components, take our time, and look to see how can we automate collection of important data that will have an impact for our customers. For example, domain names, internet-facing domains. Well, a domain for many attackers is a starting point. It is associated with an IP address typically, and there's going to be network services hosted on it. Of course, we want to find domains because there's typically functionality behind it that we can try to break. So looking at new domains provisioned, trying to figure out when there's a new domain created on behalf of a customer or a subdomain provisioned, if we can quickly get a hold of them and check out and see what's going on it, we can make a difference. We can ask ourselves who registered it, and sometimes we see very funny things when we find phishing domains. We see like profanity and stuff in the emails and so on. But we have all kinds of information we can go look for. We have brute forcing, we have word lists that we use, but perhaps the most valuable is certificate transparency logs. If you haven't heard about CTL, the certificate transparency logs, it is time, because CTL is basically a public log of all the certificates that you create on behalf of your domains. It is basically a statement that, hey, this certificate authority has created this certificate on behalf of a domain, making it a beautiful resource for attackers to figure out what there is to attack. Let me find, for example, here's a website that we can use to search in the history of the log. So up here, for example, I could put in, say, like this, beautiful autocomplete here. And I can search for the wildcard here. And this is a historical search. Did I click enter or not? I didn't. I'm using Internet Explorer, so I'm not sure. It's a bit slow, you know, so you got to let it run for a while. But I just searched through the history of the CTL. That's something else than sitting on the beating pulse of the CTL. The pulse, all the new domains that are created every single second is what we look at, but this website allows us to go back in time and see which domains or which certificates has been created. And wouldn't you find the SNDPTA01 Stortinget.no? That sounds interesting, doesn't it? And I want to quickly, once that domain has been created, I want to quickly jump on an opportunity to ask myself, can I hack the customer now? Is there something here to find? Is there any mistakes? We've had customers that within 24 hours of them putting on SSL TLS on a website, within 24 hours, we've been able to call them up and say, hey, we got the IT administrator's password in plain text, and we got your third-party supplier's super admin password in plain text, by simply looking at new domains. How is that possible? Well, you know, when a domain is provisioned, for example, it's lagging like crazy here. Bad decision of using Edge, I guess. But when our new domain is provisioned, we will immediately jump to the conclusion that, look, let's scan this. Let's assume it's online and find services. And then we find, well, IT operations, developers, they're building things. They're setting up the blocks, and they're putting things online and so on, installing services, getting things ready and so on. And that's when we look at those systems, we ask ourselves, maybe there's some temporarily security vulnerabilities in place here. For example, in our case where we had less than 24 hours to find passwords in plain text, you know what had happened? They had turned on directory listing on a folder called logs. So we find the logs folder, and inside of it, there's a bunch of text files of the logs of the server and the web application. We click the logs, and it turns out that the application logs usernames and passwords in plain text when somebody tries to log on, because the application is running in debug mode. And so it wasn't hard at all. It wasn't sophisticated at all. It was all about taking the opportunity as soon as possible to demonstrate the risk. That password, the third-party provider was using, by the way, this was for a Microsoft Teams and SIP integration. Their third party that they were using, that password, I guarantee you, works at other customers. It was like one of those passwords, you look at it and you go, yeah, this is the one password that they use for everything. And we had a wash-up meeting. Our customer, they were like, but we got to ask you, how can you be so fast? 24 hours, how is that possible? And it's not hard when you look at the logs of the CTL like this. When you look at the live stream of data here, and you look for keywords, not Stortinget.no, you look for Stortinget, what you will find is that you will find thousands of certificates pertaining things that might include this name. You will find phishing domains. You will find anything that pertains to keyword Stortinget. And then you will filter out and score those assets or basically score them on the likelihood of it belonging to your customer. You can do like a regex and say, I want to look for Stortinget.no and only that. But the wildcards are better. Look for Stortinget or the name of your customer. You're going to get some false positives, but you will find domains like, say, Stortinget-gdpr.com.no or something like that. You're going to find those domains that are being staged and built to set up phishing for the future. And also you'll find real attack surface, which is very fun to hack. So the CTL, beautiful for bug bounties. There's more. There's plenty of things, of automation that we're building to allow us to collect data. For example, URL shorteners. Vega, who is in the audience here, me and him did a project where we took archive teams. They have basically what they do, this team over at archive, they're called archive team. What they do is that they brute force URL shorteners, bit.li links, and so on. Those links are being brute forced to see what is behind them. Because if you hit the right URL, there's going to redirect you to some kind of website. And those websites might contain information that our customers are interested in. They might contain domains, internal domains. They might contain information that pertains to our customer's domain directly. Or when we look through the brute force URLs, we find like all kinds of hacks in progress. We find all kinds of interesting evidence of URL shorteners being used for all kinds of things. And here we see actual URL shortening links to backup files, SQL injection, we had local file inclusion, we had IEDOR attacks, we had all kinds of links identified that will give us information that, hey, this website is vulnerable, because attackers are using these websites as well. And then we found a ton of booking confirmations, a ton of flight tickets, and hotel reservations, and so on. And we're just looking for a customer's name. If you ever see this, parked domain, we are very interested in that, because while it's parked today, it could be something else tomorrow. It could be something that you utilize the next day. So when we see something parked, we use a feature that we call a delta checker, which is basically a little check that goes ahead and continuously queries the service and notifies us if it ever changes. So we can get an alert that, hey, all right, this domain has been registered, it's old, but all of a sudden it goes active. We want to take advantage of that opportunity. Funny thing about Domain Shop, actually, we accidentally scanned them over IP version 6 not too long ago. I believe it was about a year ago. And on IP version 6, we found a port open on a parked domain. We found a port open on, I think it was port 9000. And it was node exporter. And the IP address behind these parked domains is, well, Domain Shop's web server. So when the founder, when I let him know on LinkedIn that, hey, this port is open, he was very happy. It was only open over IP version 6, not over IP version 4. Mistakes happen, right? We actually had our service, in terms of port scanning, we had our service actually catch ourselves in a mistake. Because when we scan domains and IP addresses, when we try to figure out what network services are behind them, we also do it to ourselves. We have a project that we call navel gazing, where we have all the assets that we know about, that we have. It's like our asset inventory. We also scan them. And all of a sudden, one day, one of the analysts asked, hey, Chris, is this port 8080 supposed to be open? And it turns out that in DigitalOcean, sure enough, we had a Docker container that had, by accident, exposed port 8080 to the internet. It was not supposed to be open. And we found that by basically scanning. Using port scanners, you can wrap these tools and make them put data into databases, for example, and so on. Using port scanners, we want to see what the current landscape looks like. That's your digital footprint. And then we want to see if there's in any way in the future a new port that is opened. Any time in the future a new service opens up, we want to know about it. For example, over in the UK, we found a crypto wallet all of a sudden exposed for like a couple of hours. All of a sudden, hey, here's a crypto wallet hosted online. Very interesting. Print screens, look for CVEs, see if we can find any vulnerabilities, but all of a sudden it was gone again. It's oscillating. We can find these things by scanning the attack surface in different configurations. So you don't need to scan every single port every single day necessarily. It will be a lot of traffic. It will be a lot of potential waste. So what you can do is you can scan in different configurations that make you more effective. For example, by scanning, according to Mmap at least, I know some of the data is a bit old, but according to Fyodor and Mmap, by scanning 576, the top most common ports, you will find 90% of the available attack surface by only scanning close to 600 ports. That's much more effective. That you can do on repeat. You can scan in higher, better, faster intervals so that we can find if something is happening. Once there is something that is discovered, you can jump on it immediately. Keep in mind, this is from an external attacker's point of view. But we are working for a customer, and the customer can very well tell us, hey, we're planning on releasing a new domain. We want to give you a heads up. Here's the domain name. You're welcome to start looking at it right now, but it's probably going to go live in the next couple of weeks. The teamwork between red and blue, making purple, is definitively something that we synergize with. And that's nice. Trackers. DigiNinja, Robin Wood, made a beautiful little script that allows you to basically use the web trackers to understand how to find more attack surface. So for example, here we're looking at a scan using the Mmap script, HTTP tracker tracking, and it finds a HTTP tracker like, what's it called, Google Analytics and so on. And those identifiers we can basically take and apply querying on. We can Google for them, we can look for them in other places, and we can expand on our attack surface. So that's a pretty neat little trick. Here with the tracking code, you see it down there, 750-3551. You go look for other websites that have the same tracker on it. All of a sudden, you find new systems. Systems that are not attributed to necessarily a customer, domain, and so on. Nice, thank you, Robin Wood. In fact, Robin Wood has made other tools. Kind of like he's like producing a bunch of tools out there. He wrote a beautiful tool called Qul. It's a Ruby script that generates word lists. That it takes in a website, and out from this tool comes word lists that have your words in it. Meaning, if you manufacture ice cream, for example, it will have all your product names in that word list. If you have your pump supplier, it will have your model numbers and so on. Those keywords, those names, those product names and descriptions of your services and so on, you can imagine people have those as their passwords. Could potentially be right. And It could also represent domains and systems. When we see a splash website like this, which is every single day, when we see the splash website that I showed you from Stortinget, we assume there to be content behind this. And we are going to do a very thorough job trying to figure out where the application is. There's got to be something behind that. I'm sure there's an application somewhere. So we're going to be enumerating vhosts, if there's an IP address. We're going to be enumerating the content, discovering, seeing if we can find that folder that gives us the application. And you know what we do if we fail? There's no shame in this. We'll just ask the customer. Our process, we've done content discovery, we have word list. We still can't figure out where the application is. Where's the endpoint? Can you please give us the insight? So not only can we improve our processes, but we can also check out the system and see if there's any credential stuffing that might work on it, if there's any misconfigurations, any vulnerabilities we might find. So it's nice. By the way, super pro tip, if you're bug bounty, check out IIS short name scanning. How many bugs we have found on this. Basically, your Windows servers running IIS, many of them will support basically the old DOS short names. Remember how in the old days, if you had a long file path, it would say like 6 characters and then a tilde and a number 1, for example. Documents and settings on Windows XP, for example, you would see that short name being represented. Well, that feature is still supported. Right? Windows NT is beautiful, and it's running behind the scenes, supporting short names. And we can brute force, basically, from an external point of view, we can try to brute force what short names exist on a web server to find a lot of great information. So if you don't know about that technique, you should definitively check it out, because it's a lot of fun. And I've spent countless number of hours just trying to figure out which files are behind a web server. Other things, technology stack. This is a huge one for a lot of customers, because a lot of the times when the customer looks at their technology, they have, say, a vulnerability scanner giving them information about all the bad things that are happening with their stacks. All of these vulnerabilities, left and right, there's purple, there's red, there's some yellow and green, informationals left and right. And they're not sure if it can be actually used for anything. So when we look at the technology stack, what we do is that we purchase information from third parties and OSINT gathering and so on, plus our scanners give us information about technology in place. What we do is that we normalize the output of scanners and collectors and OSINT data. We normalize it into a technology type, and we basically look on behalf of the customer on the feeds from NIST and others. Basically, is this product from one day to another all of a sudden vulnerable? And if there is a vulnerability, can we hack it? And a surprising answer is actually very often, most of the time, it's no, we cannot hack the customer. Most of the time, it is risk introduced, yes, to the server, but it's actually not something we can weaponize. There is no public exploit that we can take advantage of. You can probably sit tight there, customer, put this through your regular patch management cycle, get it done, but you don't need to do it over the weekend. And that's I really like that, because instead of crying wolf, wolf, you kind of become very actionable. When Log4j happened, I was actually very happy that it happened on the day of our Christmas party. So we're going to have our Christmas party at River Security and Log4j, and we're like, uh-oh, got to cancel everything. But we got lucky. One of our guys got COVID, and he had to stay home. He worked then the next 16 hours just understanding Log4j, taking all of the attack surface that we have, scanning every single server that might have anything pertaining Java, and just figuring out anything that are out there we can hack. And very quickly, we identified several callbacks, and we can say, customer, looks like you're vulnerable over here, and we can basically assess the situation while we're then continuously to develop scripts that will help conclude the fact of a matter. All right, so we'll give some time to Q&A as well. So let me these slides will go online, okay? And you will have them. How we can look at cloud operations, how we can use OSINT and so on to help us code repositories. There's a lot of interesting things for us to look at from an external point of view. Third parties that are part of supply chains, we see credential stuffing using software as a service companies, their leaks. We can stuff on our customers, and all of a sudden we get into an account. beautiful. Take a look at these things, be inspired, and think, how can we implement things like these for our own assets? How can we start to gain that control? Mobile applications is also a big one. Not necessarily hunting for vulnerabilities in a mobile application itself, but it has typically tons of endpoints, APIs that it uses that we can now build out more attack surface on and find where we might compromise data or somehow get into the customer. And you can monitor mobile applications. With some automation, some API accesses and so on, you can get lists of applications pertaining a search or a given name and so on. So there are opportunities out there. And sensitive information, this is also beautiful. I mean, very often by literally doing what we call Google dorking, searching on Google, and sometimes even Bing. Anybody use Bing? And you want to admit, there's one guy in the back, I use Bing, and I'm proud of it, right? But because Bing sucks, it's actually useful sometimes. I'm sorry, Microsoft. Bing is beautiful, okay? But we query the search engines, looking to see, can we find spreadsheets? Can we find files and information? Say you have 100,000 results of Google from a specific search query that we utilize on your organization. We can't go over 100,000 hits, but we can take 100,001. Once that one extra comes in, we want to know what happened. And we can automate querying of, say, WordPress that has APIs that gives us beautiful lists of every file being uploaded, and so on. Right. Social media, lots of things here for you to dig into. Users, credentials being leaked. I mean, we've purchased quite expensive licenses of CTI just so we can better understand if there's any opportunities pertaining credentials that we might use. Brand, just think about what you can do with a brand to find more assets. You can take a phrase, you can take a logo, and query through reverse image searching algorithms and find more systems. And finally, some other things here. I mean, you're waiting for me right now to conclude? You gave me till 5, right? You're stressing me out a little bit.
I'm sorry. I want to fit in the. We need to fit in the CTF and as well. So
right. So
it's my fault, by the way, if Chris is going long because I was ambiguous in my communication.
He did. Yeah.
So it's all my fault. Chris is doing a fantastic job of doing what I basically.
But fret not, these notes will go online. What I hope that we will do in the future is that we will start to basically go out of our castle, defending forward. Look into the shrubbery, what exists around our castle, the things that are not governed. While most of us engineers, we sit inside here hoping that nobody jumps over the wall and breaks in, hoping that there won't be a tunnel being dug right now trying to get in. And I want us to move outside of the castle and protecting ourselves better. It does resonate very well with CIS Top 18. Look at number 1 and 2. Knowing yourself, inventory of software and assets. How are you supposed to protect yourself if you don't identify a map? Knowing what there is to protect. Where should I focus my defenses? Where do I not have governance, and so on. And I think Sun Tzu said it the best, right? We got to have a Sun Tzu quote in here. Look, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will not fear results of 100 battles. And he is right. In IT, it works the same. We can know ourselves, who we are, what to defend, and in information overload online, we can also know the attackers. Cyber threat intelligence and knowledge sharing helps us understand how the attackers work. Hence, we will know the result of 100 battles, and hopefully not get hacked. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And again, I apologize for my ambiguous communication. You were going really slow, and then I made you go really fast. So that's just how versatile this guy is. But let's do a little time for a couple of questions, because that was a lot, and people probably have some questions.
Right.
Anybody? Yeah. All right, let's start at the front.
Hi. So I would be interested in knowing your thoughts about the pricing model for this concept. Like, would this be like I'm not buying, but
right? You want the numbers and everything, right?
No,
and
no,
there's the spreadsheet that goes along with it.
Give me the price now. You don't need to know my size. No. So I was just wondering, is this like Are you thinking monthly, yearly? Is it a subscription-based model? Is it based on findings? Like thoughts?
Yes. So this would be a subscription model for sure. Pricing it's something that it's a bit more on the premium side, you could say. It's anything but cheap, I think. But the value is tremendous, and we see it every single day. In terms of how to price, there are different metrics that we can use: number of users in a company, number of companies and subsidiaries, number of assets that you discover during reconnaissance, and so on. So those numbers you're going to have to figure out and consider your internal costs and so on. How many man-hours do you need to spend staying on top of all of this attack surface and the scaling operation and all of that fun business side of things, right? Yeah.
When Stortinget got hacked, they had the post-mortem, and they said if they had turned on two-factor, the attack would be stopped. But I'm thinking that can't be right, because it was a determined attacker, and they found missing two-factor, so they got in. If they had two-factor, they would just find the next step up.
All right, that's a good observation. I think I would agree with you. Like, the attacker's probably not going to give up, but the path of least resistance, they're going to, if there is a fruit to be picked, they're going to pick it, and they're going to, get in. But yeah, MFA, come on, like how naive can we be? Thinking that, why would anybody want to hack me? Like, I got nothing to hide. Like, come on, 2022, right? You're not getting hacked. They're hacking everybody, not just you. They're not targeting you. Your collateral damage. They're fishing with dynamite, right? It just goes boom, and all of a sudden you're compromised. We have a responsibility in MFA. It's up there. We need to raise that bar.
All right, last question for Chris from Mr. Brown here, and then we'll get to the CTF winners.
Very quickly, when you were showing where you'd be having this continuous assessment, this continuous evaluation, I presume that you actually had from the perception of just of the organization's assets, just of the organization's infrastructure.
Right.
We no longer are an organization. We are in a we are within four walls. We are all over the world working. Does your model take that into consideration?
Remote workers? Is that where you're coming from, or to fully
I'm
understand?
talking about I'm using my organization's device from home. I'm talking that I'm using
Right.
my private device to access organization data. Would those also be covered in that kind of model you had?
Yeah, so it depends on how we attribute assets to your organization. And if you are running, say, a private web server and you expose your company logo, all of a sudden it's being discovered by some of our collectors and agents and scanners and so on, then we would see this system and we have a scoring way to see, hey, how likely is this to be the customer? And we'll just ask, hey, this here looks like it's a private IP address of a broadband connection. Like, something is definitively up here. So all the time do we find assets that are not governed, not maintained, and not within the scope of actually receiving a full-on pen test. We wouldn't want to necessarily hack it, but I'm sure we're stepping on a lot of toes all the time where people might get offended and say, hey, why is there hackers trying to break in here? And it's because it's being discovered. And also our pen test methodology is a bit also simplified. So we have, when doing a full pen test on a web application, for example, we have big methodologies that cover most aspects of what there is to attack. That model is simplified in this external point of view. So it won't be pressing all the buttons. All right, I think that's my cue.
Thank you very much. That was great.